What's going on, Nasteey Nation? It's Nasteey, and I would like to welcome each and every one of you guys to the second ever episode of the Real Talk podcast. Today I'm going to be joined by two fellow support main content creators, all high elo-ish players. I'm actually probably the lowest rank out of everybody here. So I'll kind of pass it off to them to give them a little bit of an introduction. Ioki, why don't you get us started off?
Okay. What's up, guys? My name is Ioki. I am the greatest support alive. I'm a multiple season master tier player. I've one trick ponied Leona to master tier before. I'm a YouTuber, streamer, the whole shebang. That's me, guys.
All right, Lohpally, what you got?
Hi guys. Hey, what's up guys? I'm Lohpally. I'm an ex-competitive player. Been challenger pretty much every season that's been available. I make YouTube content about how to be better support. What's up, guys?
All right, thank you guys for the introduction. So both of these guys, like I said, fellow support main content creators. Links to all their socials, their Twitch, YouTube, and all that stuff will be down in the description. Also, before we get into the questions, this is a new podcast that I am kind of trying to work on. So if you guys have any recommendations for the podcast to increase the overall quality, or if you guys have some topic ideas that you want us to discuss in the future, be sure to let us know. But now let's jump into the first question. I kind of want to start off very broad. Since we are support mains, we will be talking about some support related questions. But the first one is just going to be about League of Legends as a whole. I kind of wanted to get to know what is your guys' thoughts on the current state of League of Legends. I think that personally last season was a little bit all over the place, both in solo queue and competitive play. And there's just a lot of meta changes that kind of threw people off. I think that in past seasons, it's been very straightforward, right? You can look back 2 years ago to the Ardent Center meta, right? Which cancerous for the game, in my opinion. But at least everybody knew, okay, this is what was good. And last year is just like all over the place. There's Yasuo in the bot lane, there's Vladimir in the bot lane, there's all this stuff going on, and we've kind of been all over the place. But what about right now? What do you guys think is the current state of League of Legends right now? And is it good or is it bad?
This game sucks. This game fucking blows. I'm allowed to cuss.
Yeah, say whatever you want.
Okay, good.
But why do you think it sucks so bad though? Like, what is it that is what have you experienced that has made you, say that the game sucks?
I don't know, like a lot of executive decisions Riot makes, like from top to bottom, is just absolute garbage. Like the positional ranks, like I don't know if that's like what we're trying to have a topic over here today, but like it's just terrible. It's like so bad for the health of the game. I think that it caters to such a small percentage of the people that actually play this game. Like most people, like this game's been out for a decade. Most people know what role they want to play. They want to specialize. They want to get better at that role. Nobody plays like more than 2 or 3 roles. Most people play 1 role. So like to have an entire system and to like change the entire matchmaking system to cater to people that like, oh, I want to dabble in ADC, or today I want to play top. Like that's not like the normal League of Legends ranked player. I just think it's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just go to the positional rank stuff. I think in concept it makes a lot of sense on paper in the sense that you don't want to feel bad when you get off-rolled, but there's too many convoluted like problems that came about that. There's plenty of posts on people where people are dual queuing and literally playing each other's roles and then swapping, and so they're like 400 LP, but they've never been past Diamond 5. There's like a lot of abuse cases because of all these elements. So I think in concept, like, oh yeah, don't feel bad about like getting off-rolled is great, like when you say that out loud, but all the things you have to do, all the hoops you have to go through to set it up is really bad. I would have personally preferred, if you were going to keep the queue system the way it is, where you select a role, I would have much rather had a check mark that just said, I just want this one role, only role. I know my queues are longer. Boom. And like, yeah, if it's an opt-in system, it's good.
I'm willing to wait as long as possible.
Yeah,
to put me in the guide.
I agree.
I think as long as it's your conscious choice to do that, and it says you're gonna be a longer queue, yes, perfect. Okay, I think a lot of people would just do that for the most part.
I think
that's a way better solution.
Like all the other problems it brings up, like with people, like you said, it sounds good on paper. Like I don't want to feel bad about getting off-rolled. But especially when you start getting into the higher elo parts of the ladder, where like you have people that like have grudges against each other and shit like that, it's just terrible. There's so many lobby hostage situations, and there's the fact of the matter that is, if you're off-rolled, you're literally playing for 3 LP. Like you aren't gonna care.
When I was
not going to care.
When I was climbing, I got two games with 80 carry, and like the game started bad. I'm like, who the fuck cares, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, like
you have to
what type of
care about
person
that.
is going to care in that situation?
You're not emotionally invested, which then causes problems with like the whole, well, he's not invested, so it pisses me off kind of thing.
I also think it's really funny that I think as support means we probably benefit the most from it, or not benefit, but we don't have we're not affected by as much because we still get our role the majority of the time. And the fact that
See,
well, you are impacted because anyone who's off roll doesn't give a shit about
That's
you
true.
in your game.
Yeah.
You're almost always
say-
on.
But at least we don't have
you get your role.
we at least don't have the aspect of like having to play off-roll games as much. And, you know, we're still impacted by the whole system as a whole, but we're not impacted by that aspect. And the fact that we kind of are not as bad in a situation as others, and we can still recognize that it's like a bad system, I think that just kind of goes to show a lot about how bad the system is. And you guys point out the flaw.
I would even say that we're the ones that are impacted the most.
Really?
Because like you say, we get off-road the least, so we never get those games where we're only.
You're emotionally invested in most of your games.
That's true. Yeah.
Where you play with people that are just like, well, I'm off roll. Who the fuck cares about this game? They don't.
Yeah.
And like, I even experienced it when I was on off roll. I was like, why would I give a shit? Like, if the game is doomed, whatever, man. Go next, 15.
Okay.
Like,
I can see that.
and then it also talks like to huge amounts about like normal human beings that don't play for 10 hours. Imagine if you only have a 3 or 4 hour time slot or like a couple hours. You can only play like 2 or 3 games, and you only play one role. Like League, like literally League is a specialty game at this point in time. No matter how much they want to pretend it's not. There's role selection, like usually it's to one trick or play like 2 champions at most when you're learning the game that you just like have fun with. And so it's really dumb for like people that I just want to play top lane. Well, I only had 2 hours to play and I got a game of 80 carry, and I really didn't want to spend 40 minutes in an 80 carry game, right? Like for normal people that can't spend 10 hours a day, it's really problematic in that situation too.
Yeah. Hey, yo, Nasteey, why did you have us on this podcast, dude? All you've done is ruin my night. I'm just pissed off.
You know,
Are we gonna talk about anything we like?
Yeah.
Joins the League of Legends podcast, gets mad when talks about League of Legends. Nice.
Pretty much. All right, let's move on to the next question before we get more triggered. So more about the current state, though. Let's talk about the current state of the support role. You can take this any direction you want. Maybe you just want to talk about like the support meta or how big of an impact support has right now. I actually don't know where I would start, so I'll let one of you guys start on this question. Take it any direction you want.
Go ahead, Lohpally.
I just think in general it's relatively boring in the sense that there's not like a lot of deviation when it comes to your itemization as a support. Like if you play a tank support, you build a Zeke's, you build a Knight's Vow, you build a Locket. Wow, very exciting. And all these items for the most part don't have any like intuitive interaction with anything. You put the Zeke's on the person, well, you're already going to use your ult in the fight, so then there's a circle around you. Cool. Or like the Knight's Vow is just working the whole time. You know what I mean? Like there's not like a lot of intuitive items. I really think that the baseline, like really well designed item that I love in the game is actually Mikhail. It's not a really good stat item, but if you use it correctly, like if you cleanse someone out of something, it's very valuable. Like if you actually use it correctly, but it's not a stat stick and it's intuitive. And I wish there were more items like that so that like you can really see like the impact of a support, because support is supposed to, at least from like all intents and purposes, supposed to be relatively weak or squishy, kind of poor on gold, but like really makes up for that with well used utility. And I don't feel like that in support role right now. I feel like the best supports to play are things that just do damage. That doesn't even make sense. Like you're the role that makes the least amount of money and somehow you do the most damage in games. Or like you play a tank because the tank is invincible because of like base stats. It's just like kind of boring in that sense. Like I don't feel like I have a lot of skill expression as like an individual anymore, or pretty much at all, like in the game for a long period of time, because the itemization is just not fun. It's boring. Okay, so that's interesting that you say that, because I've never really put much thought into like support itemization differences. But and this is kind of a counter argument. I don't know if this is exactly correct. But would you say that in comparison to other roles that it's stale, or do you think other roles are stale too? Because you know I'm not an ADC expert, but the way I look at ADC, I don't think that there's a lot of differentiation. That's not English. I don't think there's a lot of different. Thank you. That's proper English. I don't think there's a lot of like different builds going on there, right? Do you think that this is something that the support is, you know, the worst at as far as different items, or are there other roles out there that struggle too? I just think that when it comes to like identification of classifications on like specific classes, right? Like usually top laners are like bruisers or tanks, like junglers are like fighters. And we kind of go down the list. Like most of these champions, based on the core philosophy of like League, get stat sticks, and that's what makes them powerful. But support isn't supposed to be like that, in my opinion, at least. Like in my opinion, you're not supposed to make a lot of gold. You're supposed to make a lot of value out of your utility. And so like having items that like almost basically correspond to the same archetypes of the carry roles is problematic. It's why there's been so many numbers nerfs on like, do you remember when junglers were literally just building Knight's Vow and Zeke's every game, and lockets were top lane items and all of this stuff? It's because like these items aren't intuitive, they're just stat sticks but they're like pick it up on support, but then if their numbers are too high, right, everyone builds them because they're efficient. And I just think that a way better way to go about like supports is have their utility expressed in their itemization. And I think that we have literally a perfect example of that with Mikhail's, where you don't build it every game and it's intuitive in its use and it doesn't give you a lot of good stats. Like when you build Mikhail's, you're not like, wow, I'm so much more powerful as my champion. It's like, if I cleanse correctly, it's good.
That's like a really good point that I've never heard put into words, because I've always really enjoyed, like, I've always adored the item Mikhail's. Like I build it like on all enchanters, and I've always loved like you said, it's very intuitive. It
feels
like
good, right? When you cleanse someone, you're like, damn, yeah, especially like, that was super good, right?
So many people come to my stream and don't know that you can like self-cleanse like stuns with Mikhail's. Like,
precast it.
If you precast it and then you get hit like by a TF yellow card, you just walk away like nothing happened. So many people, I find so many people, they're like, how did you do that? So like, it's really intuitive and like skill expressive item. And I really think we need more of that, rather than, like you said, just like stat sticks, you know, pumping damage into shit like Brand and Zyra and being like, there's your strong support.
So you guys don't think an item like Redemption, where you just press it at any point during the team fight and it's going to benefit you, is good for the game? Is that what you guys are saying?
It's the term you're always looking at is intuitive. Like, you use it in certain circumstances based on the scenarios happening. That's like saying you use Locket. You know what I mean? Like, you jump into a team fight, damage starts throwing out, you use Locket. It's kind of the same thing with Redemption. I guess you could use the argument, okay, it has a 2.5 second cast time, so you have to have like some preemptive nature. But it's been my experience that the best policy for something like a Redemption, team fight starts, drop it immediately where everything is happening, and don't think about it afterwards. And I just wish there were more things like Mikhail's where you didn't always build it, the stats aren't good on it, so you have to use the item correctly to get value out of it. And I think it's still okay to have other supports in the game like Zyra or Brand, but like you have to do well on those champions to get value out of them. And I think that's like the differentiation I have with support right now, where I feel like somehow you have less gold, but like you do as much as every other role, and that doesn't make sense to me, because at least like when I think of support, I think, okay, I have low econ and I have to really make a lot of value out of my low economy. Whereas I don't feel like that at all. Like you're just equal, you're like relatively equal economy to like most champions nowadays.
All right, that was really interesting. I'm glad we talked about that, because, you know, Ioki kind of mentioned it. It's like that's something that he's always had in his mind, but he never like knew how to like, talk about it. Before we go on to the next question, is there anything you guys want to say about the current state of like the support champion meta? Like, do you guys think it's super one-sided or boring?
I do.
Yeah, go for it.
Talk about my favorite support, and I don't know if this is what you're trying to talk about, but I want to talk about my favorite support right now. AP J4 support is the most fun shit. Everyone that's watching this podcast, go play it in your ranked promos. It's so good and it's so fun. You can actually one-shot people. You bring a surprising amount of utility. Like, people literally just think you're trolling when you lock it in because it's APJ4. But like, you can proc Ardent with his E. You can proc like four procs of Airy by just dropping your flag in the middle of a team fight. It's so much fun. Just wanted to plug what I've been playing lately. I'm in love.
I think outside of, as long as you didn't like playing enchanters, actually playing support is really fun in terms of your variety. But if you liked playing traditional supports like Lulu, Sona, Janna, you're really not having fun right now. Those champions are like actually trash. But that ties into the fact that they're tied into the success of AD carries and games end too fast for AD carries to come online. And then also they have some laning issues. But I actually think, like, I mean, you've been playing AP Jarvan. I was doing some Jarvan. I like building it tankier. But I think that, like, you can pick a lot of supports right now, and they really do work. and that is really tied to the fact that the games can be over so quickly that you don't feel the punishment almost of like having kind of a wonky team comp. Like there's not. I remember like the word scaling got used like a lot when you used to talk about like how a game state was like, okay, we're behind, but like we scale way better, our team comp is way better, and I don't feel like that matters nearly as much anymore because there's such an influx of early game gold between the platings, how powerful dragons are now in terms of their stat values, how easy Rift Herald is to use, and Baron buff is just OP.
Yeah, so I was definitely going to answer this question in the sense that like I do think that there's a lot of viable champions right now. I mentioned
like you have playing Zac support.
Yeah,
like
no,
that.
yeah. I think haven't you played AP Ezreal? Is that correct?
Yeah, until they reworked him with the W,
But yeah, the point is like there's a lot of viable options right now, and I have a lot of people that like comment under YouTube videos or like ask on stream, like, hey, tank supports are OP right now, right? I'm like, well, I mean, Alistar is good, right? But then like Nami also has a high win rate, Zyra has a high win rate. Like it's not just like, oh, tanks are good, mages are good, casters are good. Because like Nami has a high win rate, but Janna doesn't, right? So it's not just casters are good. It's not just this is good. A little bit of everything is viable. So you know, I kind of cringed a little bit when you mentioned APJ4, but I mean, everything's working right now, right? Like you mentioned,
you have a good early game, it's fine.
Yeah,
like that's like how the game is.
Like,
so you can kind of just go nuts with that. Go nuts with picks.
I put hundreds and hundreds of games on Zac, so like I feel comfortable on the champion. I just whip it out in the support role. I get ahead early. We take all the plating. We go mid, get a couple plates there, and then you just like
you're rich as fuck, dude. You win.
Yeah, coin flip, I guess. But all right, I'm glad that we were able to kind of talk about not only just like the champions, or not only just the items, but both of those. So let's move on to some, because we were just talking about champions. Let's talk about specific champions that need a buff. We'll talk about what champions need a nerf in a little bit, but let's talk broad first, and then we'll narrow it down to support. But maybe the only champions we could think about are supports, because that's what we play. I'll start it off with my favorite champion, who now has, by the way, a 45% win rate in solo queue. The only champions that are worse than him are Ornn support. What else is there? Like Maokai support. I don't know. There's just a bunch of weird picks. He has a 45% win rate, and then it's something like pre 30 minutes he has a 35% win rate. Like this champion,
they literally broke his legs.
He was nerfed to the ground, and I'm assuming that it's because he's strong in pro play, which I understand. Like he was like pick or ban first week of LCS, if I remember. But I feel like there's got to be some middle ground here. Like I don't know. That'd be my first champion that needs buff.
So like jumping into this, it's Rakan, right?
It's Rakan. Yeah, it's Rakan.
Okay. So pretty much this is one of those like divides basically between competitive and solo queue. So when you think of Rakan, you think hit level 6, do stuff with it, right? And then like play between each of your ult cooldowns. Right now in solo queue, fighting, like even before Rakan was nerfed actually, like he didn't do super well in solo queue. And that's because there's just such a high frequency of team fighting, or like just fighting in general that's just random. And so like when they started tacking on like a lot of extra cooldown onto his ult, it was actually really difficult to always have your ult up for every fight. Plus, if your teammates aren't instantly on top of who you go on, Rakan's value is gone instantly, because actually his CC is relatively short, but it's impossible to avoid, and it's very precision based, right? So when you're coordinating with a team, maybe you even pre-prep it, you're like, I'm looking for X champion. Your teammates are there to always follow up. But for solo queue, it's a lot more problematic, because usually if you don't go instantly on a play, the play is gone anyway. So even sometimes when you do it, people don't follow up, and the CC isn't very long, and you die very fast. Plus you don't have like a lot of lane pressure in the early stages. So even before the nerfs, like Rakan struggled a lot in solo queue. So really what you have to like identify is like, is this champion just so broken and competitive that who gives a shit about solo queue? And I think that's basically what they decided, was it doesn't matter if he's bad in solo queue. He's already bad in solo queue by like a lot of the standards. They just decided, okay, well, if he's just not like, we can't have this champion functional. And that's what's happened actually with like a lot of champions. Like a lot of the reworked champions put into the game, like Akali and Irelia, those champions did okay in solo queue for the most part, but they just rip people apart in competitive when like they're played at the highest level. And Rakan was basically like the Akali or like the Irelia of support. So I understand why they did it. It kind of sucks,
Yeah.
but like I don't know how you decide.
I wonder.
You know what I mean? Like
I wonder if there's some kind of like.
My
Go for
issue
it.
is. All right, my bad.
No, go.
My issue isn't that they neutered him in solo queue. It's that they took away what was essentially like part of his kit. Like what's appealing and what's fun about the character is what they like directly targeted. Like there's got to be a way to like tweaking his numbers or lowering his numbers in the other parts of his kits. There had to be a better way to do it that like doesn't feel so awful. Because I don't know if you guys have played Rakan post nerfs, but it's like he's not like. There's no reason to play him anymore because we were playing him in solo queue. I understand he's a problem in pro. We're mere mortals playing here in solo queue, and we played him even when he was bad in solo queue because he's really fun. He's just a very fun, cohesive champion, and he's not fun and he's not good now. So it's just like there's no reason to even like consider looking at the champion because they targeted like part. I mean, he's a champion with a move called the Quickening. And like his W moves at a sloth's pace now. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I wonder if there's some kind of middle ground where it's like, okay, so his engage is an issue for pro play, right? Can they make him like somewhat viable in solo queue if they just like up some of his damage ratios or like his heals? Because that'll help him a little bit, right? And that's not why pro players are picking him, right? Like a pro player doesn't first pick Rakan. They're like, okay, level 3, I'm gonna put a point in my queue, and we're gonna get this huge heal, right? They're just like, all right, we're gonna chill till level 6 and then all in. So I mean, that's not gonna make a big difference, but I feel like there's always some middle ground that they can just like buff up those aspects that don't make him strong or competitive.
I don't actually think so. I think that his RW combo was made too good. It was literally like it's actually hilarious, but like the champion was designed too cohesively that if you push numbers up on him, then all of a sudden the champion's limiting factor, which is the level 6 is where he's powerful, level 1 through 5, like that's punishing elements, don't exist anymore. And then because of that, you'll have a situation where like if you keep bumping like Rakan's numbers, let's say you increase like his base health or like numbers on his Q or something like that, eventually you'll get to a point where do you remember when Xayah and Rakan both came out at the same time and you literally couldn't lane against it because it would just kill you at any level? That's what you'll have again with Rakan. I think it really sucks. Like I actually really enjoy playing Rakan, but legitimately like even before the nerfs, I'd never play Rakan in solo queue because he's just too slow to ramp up. Even though like I actually just played games in a tournament and won with him and like smashed on him. He just starts too slow, and I feel like solo queue's pacing right now is so fast that unless like you go nuts with his early game numbers, I don't think you're gonna find like a middle ground that's fair. Because otherwise it'll just be so powerful in the early stages that like he'll just be a god tier pick where you just he's the new Akali. You must ban him every game or else he runs you over.
What do you guys think about as a different way of targeting and nerfing Rakan to make him a little less of a god in pro play? What do you guys think about making it so that somehow they change his RW combo so that it's cleansable? Because a lot of like, I don't know if you guys saw the Reddit thread about when Rakan got nerfed. Like everyone except for support mains are like, this is justified. Like his RW is too godly. What if they made it somehow cleansable, like with a QSS or something?
But you would cleanse the charm, right?
Get charmed and then knock.
You'd literally have to change the entire archetype of the champion. Like the balancing act that's always been in crowd control right now is knockups versus CC. Like, because those are actually two completely different archetypes of like CC. So you would literally, in order for you to do something like that, you would have to change Rakan's W to not be a knockup. That's the only way. You would literally have to rework the champion's W, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense, right? What you can actually do is, if you didn't know this, if you're knocked up, you can QSS or cleanse and then flash out. Yeah. But like that's a lot of resources to use right now, and I just don't think that's reasonable. So in that situation, if you really wanted to go down a route like that, you would have to change W. Like it can't be a knockup anymore. It would have to be a stun or like a rude like you'd have to go somewhere else where that's like a functionality. But actually, that's like completely that's like not a bad idea in all honesty, and then just move power back to it, because then at least you can pop out of it. I'm gonna tell you right now that if it isn't a knockup anymore, most people just won't play it in pro play, because a lot of people will just, oh, Rakan's in the game. Like when Sedge 1 he gets played a lot in pro play, it's a QSS third item or people are running cleanse. That's been my experience in a nutshell. Plus, if you didn't already experience this, because there's such an arms race between crowd control and resistance to crowd control, a lot of people nowadays are just running precision secondary with Legends Tenacity and going murder treads, and they don't sit in CC at all.
Yep. All right, so I think we covered every single different way that we could possibly think of to buff Rakan, and it got to the point where we're just thinking like a rework is probably the only way he's going to be balanced or anything like that. So let's move on from Rakan. Any other champions that you guys come to mind for a buff? Anything?
Oh, you guys aren't gonna like this, but I mean, champions like Janna just don't make sense anymore.
Dude, she's really bad.
Yeah, I think that actually I like talked about this a little bit, but I just think that they did a really bad job making shields intuitive. So you know how the biggest problem with like Ezra is he just like kept shooting Qs, and even if he missed Qs on you, he would just have such a short cooldown and Q you again. So what they did was they bumped his cooldown up. And then they were like, okay, so now Q a Mystic Shot on it. That way if you're screwing up, right? Like you get punished. But if you're doing well, like it's more normalized. So you don't actually feel a difference if you're playing well. I feel like shields should have been something like that, where if the shield absorbs maybe like 50% of the damage in the length of time, then like it reduces the cooldown, but then they bump the cooldown. So we'll use the example of like just straight numbers, right? The shield lasts 5 seconds. You have a 20-second cooldown. But if it absorbs 50% of it, then it's a 12-second cooldown or something like that. Because I know one of the most agitating things that a lot of people had was like Janna's just running around in circles, shielding. It doesn't stop anything, but it has such a short cooldown between each of it. It didn't feel like you had any punishing windows, basically.
So you mentioned Janna, and I also wanted to mention Janna, but you wanted to mention her because you think she needs a buff. I wanted to mention her because that's the one champion I don't want to see buffed. And that's because I feel like Janna is like the anti-fun champion. Like, I don't know, I might offend some Janna mains out there, but like I don't know how you can play like more than 5 minutes on this champion without like going crazy. Like it's just, I don't find it fun to play, and it's definitely not fun to play against. So I like kind of your approach where you're like, okay, the shielding is just like unfair to play against or like not fun to play against. So there's got to be some kind of, middle ground, right?
Where, like,
high cost.
You feel bad if you fuck up shields, but if you are doing shields correctly, then you should feel like it's acceptable.
So like a high cost, high reward kind of thing?
Yeah, because one of the biggest problems I just had with Janna in general, didn't make sense that you put a shield on someone, right? That's supposed to stop damage, and then it gives it AD. Then you put it on your AD, but he's not actually taking damage. You're actually just using the shield. Like this, like literally, the shield is a bonus. Like you could literally take. In that situation, you could literally delete the concept of shield and just be like, this gives you 50 AD for 5 seconds. And like it still works, which is just weird because then it doesn't make sense. Like shield, when I think of shielding, I think damage is coming in instantly and I'm shielding to stop that damage. I'm doing to prevent it. But it's like a steroid at the same time. And that was like that and shield stacking were like the biggest problems I had with shielding in general.
Ike, do you have anything to say about Janna or like shield champions in general? Like, what is your thoughts on all of this?
Not a big fan of the champion. I can see why she.
I mean, I don't like the champion at all.
Yeah,
like,
I
really
kind of want to talk about like why people like her and don't like her though, because I think it's kind of an important topic. Because especially with us three all in the same room, I think like we're all three very different types of players. We like derive fun from the game in very different ways. Like Lohpally, stop me if I'm misspeaking here. Lohpally, you're like a really analytical, you know the differences between pro and solo queue play, and like you have all these different strategies, and like you're very like deliberate with every action in the game. And I'm like kind of like the opposite of that. I'm just like really impulsive and emotion driven. I mean, you can hear it in the way that I talk about like what they did to Rakan and stuff. Like I'm just very like I kind of do first and then think later. And then I think Nasteey, you're kind of like a delicate balance between the two of us. You're somewhere in between. Like you like playing weird off meta champs, but you're not as reckless or as like deliberate as Lohpally
that's fair.
is. And the whole purpose of me saying this is that like I think people get fun out of the game. They extract fun in very different ways. Like there are a lot of people that genuinely think Janna and like being the cuck that like doesn't let anyone else have fun, that's really fun to them. So they play champions like, you know, Janna and Lulu and.
Well, there's also people that derive fun from just winning, and sometimes picking the easier champions gives you more success than picking hard ones. So it's just fun. Like, let's be honest, like if you won 20 games in a row, you played a champion that was really easy. It doesn't have to be Janna, right? But it's really easy, or you know it's overpowered. You're still gonna play that champion, right? Like you like winning. Winning is winning's a lot of the motivating factor for a lot of people to just play the game in general.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, good points all around.
But I don't know, man. I feel like if I played 20 games and they were all Janna, and even if I won like 19, 18 of them, I'd just like I'd go.
But it doesn't have to be Janna, right?
I'm disgusting.
But it doesn't have to be Janna, right?
No,
it could be
whatever.
Yeah,
no.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
I don't necessarily enjoy it, but like
I don't like playing Janna either. Like that's what's funny about me saying something like that. Like where I think
no, yeah,
I don't like playing her.
I definitely understand where you're coming from. Where like people just find fun out of winning, and typically I'm like that myself. But I remember like a long time ago, I gave in. I played like 3 Janna games in a row, won 3 in a row, and I was like, what am I doing with my life? So you know that's me. It does vary for everybody. But I think we covered 2 good champions there that you know revolving around the idea of buffing them. What about nerfs? I'll let you guys start this off because I don't personally see like a certain champion where I'm like, this is a champion that I just need to ban every game right now. At least not in the support role. I don't struggle against a specific champion. What do you guys think though? Any champions come to mind?
Well, at the time of recording, this is on patch 9.2. I know they've got a whole bunch of ADC item reworks in the pipeline, and they're kind of being careful with it. But Lucian and Ezreal are absolutely disgusting. Every single game, a chimp could play those champions. They're so busted.
I'm not sure if I agree with that at all.
Really?
I think the reason why you see those champions is because crit items suck, bro. Like if you look at Lucian and Ezreal, do those champions build crit early?
No, that's a good point.
No, they don't. Which is exactly why like they're powerful picks, because they just don't build what Riot wants you to build on AD carries. Like Lucian goes Blade of the Rune King. Okay, anytime that Blade of the Rune King has been a good item, any champion that uses Blade of the Rune King is overpowered, because just look at the item and you compare it to like traditional stuff where BF Sword was either 1550 or now 1300. Being able to control your back buy timers and just be able to buy like all these small micro pieces gives you so many early like power spikes. You don't even have to finish your item, whereas like a lot of crit ADCs, your itemization really relies on finish the item basically to get any level of power. And I think that Ezreal, I know it's frustrating for a lot of people, but I think it's only frustrating because they really haven't messed around with the Iceborne Gauntlet interaction for a long period of time. I think that's like more problematic than anything. So like a lot of the frustration I hear from people is, like Ezreal just gets, you know, his Gauntlet and a Murra mana, boom, he just keeps hitting you with Qs, right? And like you don't feel like you can do anything. So I agree that some interactions of Ezreal are really imbalanced, like the Gauntlet. But when you play against an Ezreal and he builds a training force, I'm like, okay, like he hits skill shots, like his skill expression is there. I feel like if he's playing well, he'll do well. And I mean, I'm sure you've laned with really bad Ezreals, right? It's very not fun to play with them when they're very bad. So I think having good skill disparity is a good thing for champions. Like I actually like Ezreal for the most. I just don't think his Q should reduce the cooldown of all his spells. I just think it should reduce the cooldown of his Q, because it feels like when you start getting into mid game, he has 40% CR. He Qs you, he E's, he Qs you again, his E is up, and that's very frustrating. That's a reasonable thing to have.
So you think it should be like Thresh's Q, where it's like if you hit Thresh's Q, then his Q's on a lower cooldown, basically.
I just don't think the Mystic Shot should reduce all of the spell cooldown, like, because that's what it does right now, and that's causing a problem too, right? Have you ever had an instance where like mid game Ezreal's like level 11, he's queuing some minions, he ults you, and then like a wave later he has ult up again, and it just does an insane amount of damage. So like I think there are easy ways. Okay, I guess I do agree in some sense that I would nerf, but I think that these champions are just basically powerful because itemization and the game state empower these champions. I think that if you actually think back to a lot of ADC metas, there's almost always a triangle, almost just based on itemization and game.
All right, we're lagging a little bit. Can you guys? You
I
so?
see like speeding up and slowing down.
Yeah.
Like, phasing through time, Lohpally.
Yeah, it's funny.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, could you hear?
Yeah. Like the bad connection like catches you back up. Like you'll be talking slow and lagging, and all of a sudden it's just like Eminem rapping out of nowhere. But it's good. Okay, yeah, I was gonna jump in on that, but I think you kind of nailed it there. I agree. Like the crit items, it's just like if they're not good, then ADCs who don't use crit items will be good. Any other?
Or your game length isn't, or if your game length isn't long enough for your ADC
Yeah.
to get crit.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
true.
Which sucks.
And then, would you say another issue is like, as you mentioned, you know, when you're not getting crit items, let's say you're building Bork, right? You can get like a couple long swords or whatever, right? And you're instantly stronger than the enemy team who has like boots and a dagger, right?
Or cutlass.
Exactly,
like,
yeah. Or
Sheen.
Sheen.
It's a cutlass, they fuck you up. Or yeah, Sheen is like a really good power spike.
So early game.
Like, those items are so powerful that in a lot of situations nowadays, I talk to a lot of Ezreals, they'll opt for Sheen before the tier now, just because lane is that important.
Yeah, for the platings and stuff like that, and just early game.
And like a side note, like another ADC that I felt is really powerful nowadays, and she builds Bork too. Like she doesn't get a crit item really.
Who is that?
She has a lot of like baseline.
Who was it? Vayne?
Ash.
Ash.
Oh, Ash.
Huh. All right.
She's very powerful in lane. She has good utility, and she builds a Blade of the Rune King. She build a crit item first, so you know they're for a lot of the power picks right now.
Okay, let's talk about another champion that could maybe use a nerf. Anything come to mind for you guys? What about Karthus? Do you think Karthus is an issue?
Dude, honestly, kind of Renekton. I don't know.
Renekton.
Man. I'm like really close friends with a bunch of Renekton one tricks, and I understand like a high skill cap champion, but all I can say is that every single time there's a Renekton in my game, the dude he pile drives lane. Like I think that his like status as a lane bully that falls off has just like gotten out of hand to the point where like, especially with the low, like, you know, like we've been talking about, the games are over sooner. So like, when does he fall off? Especially if he's getting 4 kills in lane. But I don't have an in-depth, complex, not working knowledge of Renekton. All I know is that I see him pop off a lot.
Talking to a lot of top laners, the real problem with top lane right now is Essence Reaver, the item.
Huh.
I talked to a lot of people where they're just Essence Reaver is a really problematic item. I've seen it like Jax is actually a really good talking point too, with this situation where they kind of just pop their ultimate. They're hitting you the entire time. They have like really good attack speed because of the passive and usually some other item that gives them it. And so they basically operate with no cooldowns. So like Essence Reaver Renekton, because his W is technically 2 or 3 hits depending on his rage bar, literally his like spells just cycle. Like you're literally just hitting a keyboard the entire time. Have you ever played?
Dude, I didn't even know it had that interaction. That's
okay. So have you ever played like Sona level 16 with your level 3 ultimate, and you're playing a keyboard? That's basically what Essence Reaver is doing to a lot of bruiser top laners. And I think that item is more of an issue than the champions itself, because if you take that, I feel like if you take that item away, then yeah, Renekton does run over lane. That's totally a reasonable thing. But I think you can make an argument that there's a lot of champions like that in top lane in general, just because there's just no tanks. Like, the only tanks you see in the game is Sion, because his passive gives him 4,000 gold worth of health at 30 minutes. That's the only way, like, a tank exists in the game right now. So, I agree that maybe Renekton is strong, but I'd be, like, hesitant to say, like, this champion's strong, more like, this item doesn't really make any sense. It is probably breaking a lot of, like, the fabric of, like, top lane and a lot of bruiser champions in general. Because they're literally just pressing R and all their skills are just up the whole time. I've literally seen, like, Jax's counter-strike someone, like, auto W and counter-strike again. It's like, what is that? That doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. It probably, like, a lot of the problem probably lies in that item.
Yeah, and it sucks, too, because a champion like Renekton is like a champion like Shaco. People who play those champions like live and breathe those champions, and since it's such early game focus right now and there's some kind of broken items in between, usually like one trick, it's been my experience that they play very like snowball-y champions most of the time that like style on people. So if they ever play like against an off-role player or someone they're just better with, because the matchmaking system right now is not so great either, they kind of just run over the player, and with things like plates in the game and like a Rift Herald access to top lane, yeah, it can feel really helpless very fast. I do agree in that sense. But I think you could easily add like things like Jax and Darius to that, and if you see same, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of just an unfortunate circumstance of the like how the game is right now with the pacing of it.
So I don't have anything specifically to add to Renekton, and you guys didn't seem to jump at my suggestion, but I do want to hear if you guys have anything to say about Karthus. because I think Karthus isn't like pick or ban in competitive, but he's definitely like played a lot, and he's also played a lot in solo queue, and he just does a ton of damage. And it's like, yeah, you can like use Locket or Zony as his ulti, but he's a little out of control in my opinion. Do you guys think he's an out of control champion at the moment?
You want to go first or me?
I haven't honestly had too many problems with him.
Mm-hmm.
I see the occasional, like, you know, just keyboard masher that just runs at you, racks up like 7 deaths in laning phase, and is somehow still super relevant. But like, I haven't seen him like abused across 3 roles or anything, and I don't really have anything to add about Karthus.
I think he's really not fun to play against, but I would never use the word overpowered because I feel like there's adequate counterplay to him. So, really great example is jungle. Like, there's a lot of Karthus jungle that's actually been going on because he can just clear every camp like within 3 minutes. It's actually insane how fast he can clear camps and just like completely get ahead of the enemy jungle. And it is really annoying that how much damage his ultimate does. But I think a lot of that is just because everyone just plays damage champions also. You know what I mean? So like, it's kind of the same concept, like, is Kha'Zix overpowered? Well, would he be if there were 3 tanks in the game and a shield support? No, I'd probably be pretty bad. But because there's 4 damage dealers in a Zyra bot lane, I guess he's pretty powerful, right? So I think that just based on the circumstances, he's just good right now. Just based on, like, all of the other pieces that kind of fit together. And I think there are a lot of counterplays to him. Like, you can get a stopwatch or Zonia's. You can build Lockets, Redemptions. I feel like there's like a reasonable amount of counterplay that if I kind of put the same amount of gold on like another hard carry champion, I feel like that champion would do the same thing as Karthus. So it's hard for me to be like, is Karthus overpowered? Or are people just killing themselves a lot? And like a lot of other champions are just kind of getting strong off of that too.
All right, fair enough. I want to talk some more about, you know, some solo queue specific aspects of the game, specifically for the support role. So what do you guys think are some of the more larger aspects of the support role that you think people should need to be focusing on in their games? For example, there's a lot of like, you know, typical things in the game that most roles will need to pay attention to, like their CS and you know, just keeping up in farm and stuff like that. But that's not something support does so much. You know, you get your gold generation other ways. So what are some main things that you think support players should be focusing in on in their games?
Now, are we talking like specific to this period in time, like this current meta, or just like general, like what should support players be?
I would say just in general. So like for me, I would say something that an aspect of support that I always like to put a large emphasis on is like roaming. And you know, this is something that's like if there's a caster support meta, you know, in the past when we had the Ardent Sense meta, roaming wasn't like a factor at all, because people were just like, if I roam, that means I'm not in lane, that means I'm not generating gold, and that means I get Ardent Sensor 30 seconds later than the other support, right? But like as a whole, I would still argue that like roaming is important. That's something like I personally like to put a large emphasis on. And you know, like a couple years ago, back when Olay hit rank 1 in NA, there's like a YouTube video made on him by like Duong something or something like that, right? And the guy just talks about how much Olay likes to roam all the time. So I know not every single support player is the same, and everybody has kind of different ways of approaching solo queue, but roaming is something that I personally like to put a large emphasis on. So I want to hear, like, what do you guys tend to focus on in your solo queue games?
Want me to go first?
Yeah, all you, bro.
Okay. It's kind of like abstract, but roaming is a big part of it. Honestly, like whenever people come to my stream or just like ask me in my comments or whatever, like, you know, how do you climb? How do you climb? How do I carry shitters as support? Like the ability and like learning the mindset on how to do a lot more with a lot less, because we don't have access to gold, because, you know, current meta aside, we usually aren't dealing as much damage as the other roles. Like, you need to be smarter, like with your roams and with the resources that you're given. If you think about like League of Legends as like a game of chess, supports aren't like power pieces. They're not like knights or queens or rooks or you know, but think of supports as being like the entire row of pawns. Like, you just need to be able to like accomplish more with the more the more basic kits that we're given, the more basic components of the game that we have access to. Things like roaming, things like being proactive and shot calling, and things like that. So I would just say like mold yourself into a player that's very proactive and is able to do a lot more with a lot less, because we need to reach We need to match every other player's impact on the game on a consistent basis, like game-to-game basis, without having like gold shoveled down our throat, or without having, you know, smite, or without having, you know, the ability to split push, things like that.
That's kind of like a really broad answer, but I really like it because I understand like 100% where you're coming from there. So Lohpally, you're the highest rank of all three of us, right? So you must know a lot more about support than we do, and what you should be focusing on. So what do you think is something you should be focusing on?
So like a pretty common thing actually when I give lessons is that people don't set up vision before they go to a location. They go to the location and then try to force vision the other way around, and a lot of times they end up dying. So just making sure that you get adequate vision before you do things. That way you get as much information as possible for you and your. So like a really easy and common thing is like when you have sights done, you don't walk back straight to lane unless you're preventing a dive. You need to walk to mid, clear pings, get wards down, then you go back to lane, and then you can apply pressure because you can see basically where everyone is moving and stuff like that. And the other thing is adaptability. I think a lot of people are really trash in general. Like this is actually just, you could put this on all 5 roles at getting carried or working with the person who's strong. So there's like a lot of games where laning phase is just a disaster. Like you get ganked, you fuck up some play, you die, you're 0-3 or some stuff. But there, especially a support, it's actually like a godsend. If you have another strong player, you don't actually have to farm. You can just go play with the strong player. And sometimes it's actually like comical, but I'll play like Thresher Alistar. My jungler has 5 kills. I'm literally walking with this guy. I'm standing while he's doing camps and then moving with him and doing plays because he's a strong player. That's who you should play through to get the victory. And a lot of people do a really piss poor job when they're not doing well to just play like the guy's doing well. You just play through the guy who's doing well. Use him to your advantage, and it's super easy as a support because, like I said, you don't have to farm or anything like that. You're not attached to a lane.
Yeah.
So yeah. There's plenty of games I win like that.
I have a comment and a question to add. So something that I always like to say, the comment towards your like adaptability is like people are always asking like, oh, what do I do if my ADC is like 0-6? I'm like, okay, your ADC is 0-6. What do? You try to find somebody who's like good in the game, right? You have an 0-6 Twitch, but you have an 8-0 Riven. So what do? You enable that Riven to carry your game, right? Don't sit next to your Twitch and be like, oh, it's okay, just farm. We'll win in 45 minutes from now, right? No, you go and you're playing Nami or whatever. Your Twitch is at 50% health. Your Riven's at 50% health. Guess who gets my heal, right? I'm healing that Riven. You know, I want that Riven to carry the game because they can carry the game. So that's my comment to that I wanted to add. My question that I want to add is because as far as like vision around like objectives and stuff, you said that you should be getting vision control before an objective, not like getting to the objective then setting a vision. What would you say is like an estimate time for like, okay, Infernal Dragon is coming up. When should you be getting vision down? Like a minute and a half left, a minute before it spawns? Like, what do you think?
All right, so when I played like a lot of competitive, it was you need to base a minute and a half if you intend on contesting it because it takes 30 to 40 seconds just to walk to it. I think a lot of people don't actually know stuff like that. So if you're backing with 30 seconds on the dragon, you don't get to the dragon pit by the time the dragon spawns. And for those who don't understand, like you want vision and then you want to stand on the vision so that they don't have vision, then they come in and you can choose to fight or not to fight in some situation. So if you intend on taking an objective, and it's always difficult, right? Because you're playing solo, you don't really know what your teammates are doing, but a minute and a half, if you don't have any wards and you don't have any vision around it, minute and a half, channel back, then you'll come back. It'll be 50 seconds to a minute till the objective is up, and you can get some of the vision down, or you're afforded time to maybe push out middle before you step into the river. Like you have a lot more options with that, but a lot of people really aren't conscious about the time of objectives and needing to get there like beforehand.
Yeah.
They look at the timer, 30 seconds left. All right, I'll make it there, guys.
Yeah.
I'll be there for the fight.
Yeah, I always like.
Well, 2 people got killed because they're trying to get a, you know what I mean? They're trying to contest a lane brush ward and they're dead.
Yeah.
They don't have any vision.
I always like to say like if you're backing for an objective when there's less than a minute, that you're backing too late. And I remember I was playing a solo queue game like a week ago or something, and like a fight broke out by the Infernal Dragon. Our jungler was like up top side farming like raptors or something, and as soon as the fight broke out and like some of us died, he's like, what are you guys doing? You're idiots. Like dragon doesn't spawn for another 40 seconds. I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? Like 30 minutes into a game, Infernal Dragon, like, we can fight this. We're prepping it, you know, at least we're trying to prep it. And yeah, pretty frustrating stuff. We are, you know, running close to the time limit that I'm trying to get to. So let's end it with one more question. Let's go with, what would you say is the fastest way to climb in Season 9? You know, we've talked about a lot of aspects of the support role. What is the one thing that's like, this is, if there's one piece of advice that you can give to viewers, this is the piece of advice that I would give. And I'll start. I want to say, this is something that me No Hackster told me. Actually, I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. Challenger support player. Lohpally, you might have played against him or whatever. He told me that basically, because I always looked at it as like, okay, if you want to be good at the game, you have to play a ton of games, right? And he told me if you play too many games, you might be going on autopilot, and that's not good. So he said, don't worry about playing a lot of games, just focus on making sure that the games that you are playing are quality games. You know, some people can literally sit at their computer for 10 hours a day and just be like laser focused on the game and just like grind and grind and grind. Other people, like me, like I play like 3 games and all of a sudden I'm like, wait, like I'm losing focus, right? I'll just find myself like at the Baron Pit at like 6 minutes in and I'm like, wait, what am I doing here, right? So that would be my one piece of advice is don't worry so much about playing a lot of games. Make sure you're playing quality games. And then if you can play a lot of games and quality games, that's better, but don't force yourself to do that because playing on autopilot is really bad. So one piece of advice for people out there trying to climb the season. What do you guys got? Ioki, start off. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, it's really kind of just an extension of what I said earlier, and it's kind of abstract still, but really just like work on being like building yourself as a proactive player. Like stop just queuing into games and, you know, not really having a game plan of what you're gonna do. And like I go into a game and I know for a fact I'm going to make one play at least that's gonna win us the game. And I go into that knowing it's a fact, even though it doesn't always happen. And I'm kind of like a frustrating player to play with. I don't know if you guys have ever seen, like, I get flamed all the time in solo queue because I basically, I'm that dude that you don't want in your promos. Like, I'll go for the big dick play, and it'll either work and it'll be amazing, and we'll win because of it, or we'll lose. I'm very rarely players. I'm very rarely like not the reason we lost if we lost. Like, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Like I go for the plays because that's just who I am, and that's how I found like the level of success on the ladder that I found is that I'm just extremely proactive. Like I'll go for the big plays, and I guess like take that idea and scale it down to like a less idiotic version that works for you. Because like I said, if you just queue up and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna autopilot, or if something good happens, okay, good. Like go out and fucking make the good thing happen, man. Stop just like sleepwalking through your games.
Even if it's not on a tier list or something like that, play the champions that you're comfortable with. I think a lot of people tunnel too hard on what's meta or what's good. Trust me, there's lots of one tricks to play champions that nobody else plays or thinks are good champions, like for a long period of time. You only have so many hours in a day, so if you spend all of your hours playing 1 or 2 champions, you'll get way more value out of it in terms of learning, getting better, progressiveness. It's all about being efficient with your time in that sense. So just play 1 or 2 champions that work for you, even if it's not like as meta as you would like it to be.
All right, hell yeah, quality advice. Gonna finish this up. Thank you guys again. I do want to wrap this up because I think it's been about an hour, and you know, low attention or small attention spans these days from viewers, and I don't want to scare them away. But thank you guys so much for doing this with me.
Talking to your own viewers, man.
Hey, I mean, you're probably gonna upload this to your YouTube channel too, right? So I'll flame them as well. Thank you guys though for joining me. This is a lot of fun. I know a lot of people will hopefully find this helpful, and you know, I think it's really beneficial to just kind of bounce ideas off of other players, specifically in the same role that I'm playing. Right, it does help quite a bit, and I feel like I'm gonna walk away from this, you know, having learned a little bit myself. Again, Ioki and Lohpally, make sure you guys check them out. Links will be down in the description. YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, all that good stuff. Any final words that you guys want to say before we end this?
Thanks for having me.
Hell yeah.
Thanks for having me. You're a great host.
All right, hey, no problem, Trevor. I got you, man. Us Trevor's got to stick together, you know. Hey, Lohpally, what? No, I won't ask you that. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. That's gonna do it. Make sure you guys leave a like on the video if you guys haven't done so already. Subscribe to the channel to help it grow. And as always, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.